The gas station stranger. Have you ever locked eyes with someone and instantly felt like they weren't just looking at you, but through you? Like they already knew what you were going to do next? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And I still think about what might have happened if we didn't get away in time. This happened when I was 17 during a summer road trip with my cousin. We were driving from Oregon down to California, just two teenagers chasing the open road, windows down, music blasting, the works. It was supposed to be fun, carefree. Somewhere along the I-5, just before sunset, we pulled into this tiny gas station. One of those old ones that look like they haven't been updated since the 50s. Faded paint, flickering lights, old-style pumps with analog dials. You know the kind. There was no one else there, not a single car, just silence and this weird buzzing from the overhead lights. My cousin stayed outside to pump gas. I went in to grab a few snacks and something to drink. That's when I saw him. A man in a tan trench coat, standing in the far corner of the store, right next to the beverage fridge. Just standing there, not moving, not blinking, not shopping, just watching me. Now, mind you, it was easily 90 degrees out, so that coat made no freaking sense. It hung down to his ankles, stained at the bottom. His hands were tucked inside the coat, and I couldn't see his face clearly under the brim of a dirty baseball cap. But I felt his eyes, cold, unblinking. I felt like I was under a microscope, like he was studying me. I grabbed what I needed and went up to the counter. The guy behind the register didn't say a word, just scanned everything. No eye contact, no hello. He seemed weird too, almost like he didn't want to be involved. I paid and walked out quickly. We got back on the road, didn't think too much of it at first. But about 15 minutes later, I noticed something in the side mirror. A beat-up old pickup truck, rusty red, no headlights, keeping its distance. At first, we thought it might have just been a coincidence, maybe someone too lazy to turn their lights on. But every turn, every lane change we made, it stayed with us. Tail far enough back to not raise suspicion, unless you were looking for it. We tested it, took a random exit, middle of nowhere. So did the truck. My cousin looked at me. He was trying to play it cool, but I could tell he was just as freaked out. He floored it, took a few sharp turns into a residential neighborhood we didn't know, then killed the headlights and ducked into a side street behind some trees. We waited. A minute passed, then two. We were holding our breath. Then we saw it. The truck slowly rolled by the intersection, crawling, like it was looking for us. Then it stopped, just sat there for a moment, engine running. Then it backed up, right toward the street we were hiding on. That's when we knew this wasn't some paranoid coincidence. We were being hunted. My cousin whispered, "Call the cops." I was already on it. Gave them everything. Our location, description of the truck, the guy in the trench coat. As I talked, the truck suddenly sped off, just disappeared into the night. The cops arrived about 10 minutes later. We told them everything. They didn't look surprised. One of them said, almost casually, "We've had reports of a guy like that. Remote gas stations. Same coat, same truck. He targets young travelers, mostly guys alone or with one other person. In some cases," he paused, "some people never made it to where they were going. We were lucky. That's all I can say. I still don't know what he wanted or what would have happened if we hadn't gotten off the highway. But now, anytime I'm on a road trip and see one of those old gas stations in the middle of nowhere, I just keep driving. Because you never know who's watching. And sometimes they don't want your money. They want you. If this story gave you chills, you'll want to hear what's coming next. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The Lake House Intruder, a chilling true story. Have you ever felt so alone, so cut off from the world, that you suddenly realized no one would hear you if you screamed? Imagine standing in the middle of nowhere, no signal, no neighbors, no one coming to check on you, and the chilling thought hits you. Even if something was watching you from the dark, even if someone was creeping just outside your door, no one would know, no one would help, and you would disappear without a sound, swallowed by the emptiness. Are you sure you're really alone right now? This story happened when I was 22, and it still sends shivers down my spine. It still haunts me every time I hear the sound of knocking, echoing in the silence. It was a summer trip with two of my closest girlfriends, a much-needed escape. We'd been working non-stop and wanted a break, so we rented this secluded lake house in Maine, far from the hustle and bustle. No neighbors, no Wi-Fi, barely any cell service, just pure peace and quiet, or so we thought. The first 2 days were perfect, a dream come true. We kayaked, grilled on the deck, stayed up late watching movies, laughing until we were tired, and felt completely at ease. It felt safe. Even though the nearest house was miles away, we didn't think anything of it, not a single worry. On the third night, things changed. It was about 1 a.m. We were curled up on the couch, watching some random horror movie. We were halfway through when we heard something outside, something soft, like light footsteps on the wooden deck. We muted the TV. All three of us sat there listening. At first we convinced ourselves it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or something. But then there was a knock, a light, deliberate knock on the glass sliding door, echoing through the silence of the night. We froze. No one said anything, not even a whisper. No flashlight beam, no voice, just another soft knock, as if someone was testing our nerves. And then again. My heart was pounding so loud it was all I could hear, drowning out everything else. One of my friends, Sarah, whispered that she saw a shadow, a silhouette in the window just standing there, unmoving. We called out, "Who's there?" No answer, just the oppressive silence. The weird thing was there was no car, no sign of anyone arriving. We would have seen headlights from the long dirt road, but there was nothing. No one should have been out there, especially not this late, in such an isolated place. I grabbed a kitchen knife, and so did the others, our hands trembling. We were shaking so bad, trying to whisper ideas back and forth, desperate for a plan. With not any type of cell service, we couldn't call for help. We were completely cut off. We ended up dragging the couch in front of the sliding door, barricading it as best we could, hoping it would hold. We sat on the floor, backs against the wall, clutching the knives, jumping at every freaking sound outside, every creak. The knocking stopped after maybe 5 minutes, but we never heard footsteps walking away. It was as if they vanished. That part chilled me the most. The silence that followed was deafening. We didn't sleep at all. The tension was unbearable. We just waited for the sun to come up, feeling a small sense of relief as the first light of dawn broke through. In the early morning light, we slowly slid the couch back and opened the door, stepping outside cautiously, our hearts pounding with anticipation. That's when we saw them. Boot prints, fresh and muddy, leading directly to our house. All over the deck, right up to the sliding door, as if someone had been pacing back and forth. You could see where someone had been standing, shifting their weight back and forth, waiting, perhaps, for us to come out. And worse, there was a faint smudge on the glass, like a face had been pressed up close. trying to see inside, peering into our lives. But the most disturbing thing? A line of rope tied to a tree just beyond the deck, swaying slightly in the breeze. It wasn't there the day we arrived. It had appeared overnight, like a sinister omen. It was perfectly knotted, stretched tight, as if someone had set it up in advance, to mark the spot, to anchor something, to tie someone up, to hoist someone up. The possibilities were frightening and chilling. We didn't wait to figure it out. Fear gripped us as we packed up immediately. We tossed our bags in the car and sped down that dirt road, our minds racing with fear and confusion. I remember checking the rearview mirror over and over, terrified we'd see someone step out from the woods, watching us leave, their eyes following our every move. We never figured out who it was or what they wanted, but to this day I can't stop thinking about how long they were watching us, how long they waited outside in the dark, and what might have happened if we'd opened that door. If you ever rent a place far out in the middle of nowhere, always double check every possible entrance. And when you hear a knock in the middle of the night, never ever answer it. If this story gave you chills, you'll want to hear what's coming next. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The Cornfield Watcher. Have you ever felt eyes on you when you were completely alone? Not just paranoia, but the raw, skin-crawling certainty that someone or something is watching you from the dark? This happened to me when I was 16, and it's haunted me ever since. I was visiting my grandparents' farm in rural Iowa for the summer. Their place was surrounded by nothing but miles and miles of cornfields. It was the kind of place where the sky seems too big, the nights too quiet, and the isolation a little too heavy. My grandparents were old school, and after dark there wasn't much to do. No internet, barely any cell signal, just the buzz of cicadas and the occasional flicker of lightning bugs. One night I was sitting on the porch, bored out of my mind. My grandparents had gone to bed early, and I figured, why not take a walk? The air was cool, the moon was high, and the fields, well, they looked peaceful. So I grabbed a flashlight and wandered out past the barn into the edge of the corn. You have to understand, out there, when you're surrounded by rows of corn taller than you, everything feels muffled. The sound of your own footsteps, the beam of your flashlight cutting through the stalks. It's weirdly hypnotic. I was maybe a few hundred feet in when I started to feel uneasy. At first I told myself it was just the wind, the way the stalks shift and sway, making soft rustling sounds. But then I heard something heavier, a crunch. Not a breeze, not an animal, something bigger. I stopped walking, held my breath, and that's when I saw it. Maybe 20 feet ahead, across a few rows of corn, something moved. I snapped the flashlight over, expecting maybe a deer or a coyote, but no, it was a man. He was crouched low, knees bent, arms at his sides, just staring at me through the corn. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just watched. For a second I thought maybe it was a scarecrow or some kind of figure, but then he shifted, slowly, deliberately, and I realized he was trying to stay hidden. My heart jumped into my throat. I took a shaky step back, and the crunching sound came again, closer this time. I whispered, "Hey, who's there?" No answer, just the sound of him shifting his weight, making the stalks tremble. That was it. I turned and ran. The flashlight bounced wildly as I sprinted back toward the barn. But behind me, I heard him moving too. Not walking, running. But here's the part that still messes with my head. When I glanced back, just for a split second, I swear to God, he was running on all fours. Not like a sprinter, like an animal. His hands slapped the ground, knees bent outward, moving low and fast between the rows. It was unnatural. I nearly dropped the flashlight. I could hear my own panicked breaths, the dry slap of my sneakers on dirt, and behind me, that horrible rapid scuttling. When I reached the edge of the field, I screamed for my grandfather. His bedroom light snapped on, and a few seconds later he came barreling out with his shotgun. I was gasping, trying to explain, pointing wildly at the field. But when we shined the flashlight back, there was nothing. The corn was still, undisturbed. No figure, no movement. Just row after row of silent stalks. My grandfather walked the edge with me, gun raised, muttering under his breath. We didn't see anything. But when the sun came up the next morning, that's when we found it. Just a few rows in, maybe 50 feet from the barn, were small, carefully arranged piles of corn cobs, dozens of them, set in strange little circles and patterns. Some had been hollowed out, with bits of string tied through them, like someone had been making something out there. And near the center of one circle, we found a dirty, crumpled sweatshirt, a man's sweatshirt. We never saw anyone wearing it. After that, my grandfather forbade me from going near the fields alone. He never said it out loud, but I think he knew. Someone had been out there watching, waiting. To this day, I don't know who that man was or why he was crawling through the corn like that. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see his face, just barely lit by my flashlight, and the way he stared without blinking, like he was waiting for me to come closer. If this story gave you chills, you'll want to hear what's coming next. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The Tent Scraper, a terrifying camping story. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a place so isolated, so deep in the middle of nowhere, that you suddenly realize if something goes wrong, no one will hear you? No one will come looking? That if you disappeared, you might never be found? This happened when I was 19. It's burned into my memory like a scar I can't ever shake off. My boyfriend, Mark, and I had been together for almost a year. We both loved hiking, and that summer we decided to go on a camping trip in Colorado. Away from the busy campsites, away from the RV parks. We wanted seclusion. We hiked deep into the forest near a river, miles from the main trail. It was beautiful. The sound of rushing water, the smell of pine, the rustling of leaves overhead. It felt like we were the only two people in the world. We pitched our tent on a flat patch of dirt, cooked our dinner over a beautiful fire, and watched the stars come out to greet the night. It was awesome. It was perfect. Until around 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly, my heart pounding in my chest, echoing in the silence. At first, I thought it was a dream, but then I heard it again, a soft, dragging sound. Scrape, scrape, scrape. It was unmistakable. Something was running along the outside of the tent, slowly, deliberately. It felt like it was searching for something. It moved around the perimeter, circling us, like a predator stalking its prey. I froze. I could feel the cold sweat breaking out on my skin as I whispered to Mark, "Did you hear that?" He was already awake, his eyes wide in the darkness. "Stay quiet," he mouthed, barely moving his lips. We had no weapons, no cell signal, no one around for miles. We were completely isolated. And stepping outside felt like walking into a trap. The unknown was terrifying. The scraping continued, circling, circling, sometimes pausing, then starting again on the other side. It was relentless. At one point it stopped near the mesh vent, right where my head was, and I could feel its presence. And that's when I heard it, breathing, slow, heavy. It was unmistakable and terrifying, inhaling, exhaling, right outside, just inches from my face, separated only by the thin fabric of the tent. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying they wouldn't unzip the tent, hoping they would just go away. Every tiny sound, the crinkle of the sleeping bag, the whisper of our breathing, felt like it echoed into the night, amplifying our fear. We stayed like that for hours. Mark and I barely dared to move, listening for any sign that whoever, or whatever, was out there had left. The tension was unbearable. Finally, as the first pale light of dawn seeped into the tent, we knew we had to get out. The night had been long and terrifying. We packed everything in record time, the sleeping bags, the gear into our packs, eager to leave the place behind. I felt a surge of relief the moment we unzipped the tent, getting out and ready to tear down the tent. But that relief lasted maybe 5 seconds, if that, because that's when we saw it. About 20 yards from where we'd been sleeping, someone had arranged sticks, rocks, and branches in the dirt in a very deliberate manner. Not randomly, not natural. It spelled out one word: stay. Massive letters, deliberate. No tire tracks, no footprints, nothing to indicate human presence, nothing to show where they come from or where they gone. Just that single chilling word, stay. We hiked out without saying a word to each other, constantly looking over our shoulders, jumping at every snapped twig, every rustle of leaves. When we got back to the car, we didn't even stop to catch our breath. We were too scared. We just got in and drove, all the way home in complete silence, our minds racing with questions. I've thought about that night so many times over the years. Who was out there? Why didn't they try to hurt us? Were they just playing with us? Or were they waiting for something? I'll never know. But one thing's for sure. I'll never go camping off the trail again. Because out there in the deep dark woods, you're not nearly as alone as you think. If this story gave you chills, you'll want to hear what's coming next. Subscribe so you don't miss it.